Hi, today I've talked about how to paint waves and focusing on shapes. So why would you maybe watch this? How about if you're starting out, you maybe want some tips with what you can do to begin. Okay, so let's check that one off. Maybe you want to improve. You've been working a little bit and you feel like you need some tips to improve. How about if you are experienced and want to simplify your working process? Maybe you feel like it's just too much. Or maybe you have experience with something else and you want to explore a different subject or a different style of painting. And then there's what's possibly the best one is it's free. It's free, and the only thing that could possibly beat that is being a wonderful excuse to have a bowl of ice cream, because you can watch it for free and eat ice cream. There's nothing better than that. Okay, so get a smile on this guy. He's happy because he's found all his answers. Okay. So let's get started here. Instead of talking right out with what we can do well, let's talk about what we can do poorly to start out. And one of the major things has to do with not just shapes, but even lines. Horizontal lines. We generally want to avoid them. So I've drawn a horizon line and something of a wave here, and maybe a line down at the bottom for foam. And so you notice that it is horizontal, which it takes up the entire painting, runs right across the entire image. It's something to avoid. And if I mark off these spaces here, they're fairly even spaces. It's a repetitive thing, and they all dip down to the same exact spot. They look very similar. That's boring. Repetition can be good, but you have to do it well. Okay. So let's start this time with maybe our horizon up near the top, and I'm going to go ahead and connect the wave to the background first. So it has this kind of upward slope, this upward U. It's a gradual change from the background and surrounding sea to the wave. And then let's say it's a broken wave, so it has some foam. The foam trails down until it reaches the bottom of the face and continues over, and we want to keep the edges a little bit jagged because that creates interest. We don't want a smooth edge. And then it goes up a little bit above the actual edge there, back down. Notice the different thicknesses, and then back up one more time. And supporting that is the curl, and the curl is everyone's familiar with that. Let's continue bringing the wave over. Maybe add another thing of broken foam just for fun. Keep it interesting. And the real transition of the face of the wave, which is generally the darkest part, kind of pulls up here on the edge. So I'm going to color that in. You can see it doesn't extend all the way. It doesn't extend all the way across. It actually pulls up along this transition from where the wave rises from the surrounding sea. Okay, so some background lines just for fun. And look how much space I'm going to give to the foreground here. This is the foreground foam. And so I give it a lot of space. And not only that, but it's a nice diagonal line and has a really interesting edges to it. It's not one smooth shape. It's got interesting edges to it, and just throwing some more suggestions of where we'd create extra shapes and edges. And maybe a foam hole. So the foam at first, when it's lying flat, is a very oblong shape, like a circle you've stretched out. And then when it rises up a wave face, it becomes much rounder, much more circular. So not only that, but as it becomes further and further from you, they get smaller and smaller. And that's really the basics of wave shapes. So we want to go ahead and just look at some pictures of real waves and see if we can find these shapes in them. For those of you who don't have a lot of rocks or anything, here's a good one. For this we would focus on the shapes of, for instance, the line of foam. We notice it is broken. It's not it's not one flat horizontal piece. And the background, we also want to be sure that we keep that horizontal straight. So if we look at these lines, they're interesting. They're not straight. They lead into the background, and these holes in the foam get smaller and smaller as it recedes, just like we discussed already. And that's really the main thing of something like this, is to create a sense of depth. Now in this one, we have the same large foreground taking up a large part of the painting. And check it out. This line isn't horizontal. It's once again diagonal. It creates an interest to the piece. And this wave has that rising shape. Here's the falling foam, or falling edge of water, which hasn't yet aerated, so it's not really all that white. And the face of the wave does behave like we'd expect, where it kind of curls up right before transitioning. And here we can just check out the top of this from here to here. Have a look at the amount of vertical space it actually takes in the two-dimensional painting. And what does it represent in the 3D space? Well, it represents a lot in the 3D space. The further and further back I get, the more 3D space I fit into this small vertical space. So that's why we have to give the foreground a whole lot of the painting. A whole lot. So about 1/3 generally, I say, should go to the foreground. About 1/3 should go to the middle ground, where the wave usually is, but not always. And about 1/3 should go to the background. Something like this. It's a good rule. And this one isn't as much about waves as it is about a foam burst. So once again, we look at the shapes of it, and we want to avoid round, boring shapes. So we go ahead, pick out these fun and blocky shapes. We want to keep the blocky shapes as much as we can, and they can get rounded as we progress. But it's always important to start your planning sketch with something blockier. In the front here, it would be tempting to have a flat horizontal line, but it's really not what we want. We want something that points towards a form here. So, for instance, this line or this set of lines, you could almost imagine it as if it were a pyramid. And so let's have a look at that. Okay. If I were going to draw a pyramid, I'd probably draw a side or two sides, and maybe one is in the shade, one is in the sun, something like this. If I wanted to draw that pyramid like this, I'd have no idea of its three-dimensional size. So as far as shapes go, this isn't really a good way. If I add another side, I make the shape better because I give it form, and that's what we always want to give. That's why I generally say we want to avoid horizontal lines. We want to avoid lines that run along the same path and don't deviate at all. And so it's always a good idea, if you're interested, grab a photo and just trace out the important shapes.